Welcome back to Decisions That Count, the podcast where we explore the science of decision making to help you unlock your cognitive potential. In today's episode, we're diving into a revolutionary approach to fitness that not only strengthens your body, but also supercharges your brain power. If you're an entrepreneur, an athlete, a gamer, student, or anyone looking to boost your focus, enhance your decision-making skills, and achieve peak performance, then this episode is for you. I'm Michelle, your co-host, and I'll be your guide on this exciting journey. So as a mum, a marketer, and a marathon runner, I am really passionate about finding practical ways to optimize my mental and physical performance.
I'm Dr. Sean Watson. I'm a neuroscientist and entrepreneur, and I've become fascinated with every aspect of the human brain. Particularly decision fatigue has struck my interest because I think it's arguably one of the biggest cognitive challenges that we're facing as a society, but no one's talking about it. And today we're going to be talking about cognitive motor dual tasking, which is a very interesting and really nascent field in neuroscience that's starting to emerge, which will help us to improve both physical and cognitive aspects of our life.
So today we have got a truly exceptional guest joining us. I am so excited for this one. This individual is a successful entrepreneur, a passionate advocate for brain health, and a pioneer in the field of cognitive fitness. With a background in contemporary dance, an MBA, and a deep understanding of neuroscience, she's revolutionizing the way we train our brains and bodies. I'm absolutely captivated by her vision, her commitment to enhancing human performance. Please can I welcome the incredible AnnaMilani, CEO and founder of Sparked.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you guys for having me.
Super excited to have you here today. You and I have been talking for a number of years now, and I think you're one of the very few people, well, certainly in Singapore, but definitely in the world who is tackling the issue of cognitive motor dual tasking and how it can improve our livelihood, our performance at work, and of course in sport. So there's a lot of questions we have lined up for you. Hopefully you're ready and prepared. You did an exercise before the podcast?
Absolutely, all the time. Dual tasking.
So I think first question's got to be, in the simplest form, like, what is cognitive motor dual tasking?
Cognitive motor training, cognitive dual task motor training happens in our life all the time, okay? And it means doing a physical task. Could be walking or stepping up and down the stairs or playing in the playground, doing any physical activity while you're doing a cognitive activity. And this is why it happens in our everyday life. Cognitive motor training, two tasks are separate. They can be measured separately, meaning the performance can be measured separately. How quickly can I walk? And how quickly can I solve a maths problem, for instance? So both come from two different streams of information, but they're performed simultaneously. That's what cognitive motor training, dual tasking is.
Amazing. I've got a quick question. Is it so if I'm walking around and I'm using my phone to write a text message, is that cognitive motor tasking?
Yes, essentially it also is. Now, that's not essentially the best form of dual tasking for your brain, most likely, because it can be quite challenging as well, of course. But that is a form of dual tasking. Now, the idea, however, is to do things that you're not typically doing. So when we do dual task, for instance, at the gym, we are stimulating a variety of domains and parts of cognition that you wouldn't typically do on a daily basis. So if you're constantly texting, and that becomes, of course, very, very taxing. So whereas when you do dual tasking in the context of a gym or in the context of what we do, we actually do things that you are not typically doing. And that's also how you're challenging your brain in a different way, because that's also very important.
So you have got a gym where people can train their physical fitness and their mental fitness.
Yes.
Would you call it mental fitness? If I said the right thing?
Yeah.
Cognitive? Yeah.
Cognitive fitness? Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this gym and the types of activities that you would do both in the physical and cognitive space.
Sure. So yes, I love the mental component as well. Sorry, I pick up on the fact that you said mental, but cognition is part of mental, right? So it's very, very important, but cognition is what we specifically focus on precisely. So we are there to improve physical training. So you're working on your cardiovascular system, you're working on your neuromuscular system, you're doing resistance training, strength training, but you're also doing motor skills, balancing, coordination, things that are very, very important across the spectrum in our daily life, across our lifespan. So we look at all those, I call them different pillars of movement and exercise and health in that sense. From the cognitive side of things, we do drills and games. We call them games oftentimes so that they don't become scary or intimidating for people, especially if they have conditions. And we do drills that will focus on and work on attention, focus, memory, processing speed, reaction time. So they work across the 4 domains of cognition: your executive function, your processing speed, your memory, and your visual spatial skills. So we combine all those elements and we create training programs that are suited to clients according to what they are trying to achieve and also what they need because of what they may be lacking.
Amazing. And sorry, Sean, I'm hogging all the questions, but mainly because I'm fascinated and I just want to know more about this before we get into the relation to decision making and decision fatigue and how this can help improve cognitive performance as a whole. Who's this for?
Yeah, I mean, it is for everybody. I used to joke at the beginning when people would ask me that question, and I would just say, for anybody with a brain. It's like with anybody with a body. Everybody that has a body needs to exercise. Therefore, anybody that has a brain should think about their brain health and their cognition. And I really mean that in that sense. Of course, there are certain populations that may need it more than others because they have incurred certain injuries, they have certain neurological conditions or certain developmental challenges or they are simply aging. But really, it's a training that should be integrating in people's life across life, I think.
Amazing. And what are the benefits from the physical side and the cognitive side? Like what's the output? What should we see if people do this type of training?
So dual tasking training will obviously help with dual task performance, meaning the idea essentially is to slow down the aging curve of dual task performance. As we get older and as we slow down, we also slow down in dual tasking. We become, someone asks us a question or we ask a question to an elderly person while we are walking, and they stop, they look at you, and then they answer the question, and then they continue walk. As continuing to walk, as they're doing, as they are cognitively thinking about the answer. So super, super important for that side of things. When it comes to cognition in general, it helps with mental sharpness. It helps with attention. So you're working on attention. How can I pay attention to a selected task, which then translates into your work life, into your everyday life? Memory is a big one. There's obviously many types of memories. Visuals, when we talk about visual spatial skills and the transferability of that into our everyday life, when we walk down the street or when we drive, do we see objects? Do we see animals? Do we see the pavement as a whole in there? Things like that perception and so on. Very, very important parts of cognition. So there's more complex cognition with executive function and other aspects. Processing speed, of course, and reaction time is also important. How quickly and accurately do I respond to a situation? So these are all elements that can be trained, and we look at those when we work with clients.
That's amazing. And is there a way of being able to measure before and after?
Yes, there is. There are validated cognitive tools that can be utilized to measure cognition at baseline and after certain interventions. There, interestingly enough, I've done a fair bit of research into validated tests on dual task performance. Those are not as there are standards tests, but I don't believe there is enough normative data around that. So I think research is still very much catching up and ongoing, but you can still assess a baseline and then look at the progression. Within some of the technologies we work with, there are different aspects that can be looked at. Again, different processing speed, aspects of certain games, and so on. So not everything is validated, but at the very least, you can have a baseline and you can see how you track.
Amazing. I have got my pass. I cannot wait to come. I need to find some time to book in and come, and I can't wait to give it a go. So today we're here to talk about decision fatigue.
Yeah, well, Anna, some questions for you, maybe off the top, and maybe it's a quick thing for the viewers too, just because one thing I find fascinating with dual tasking is we know there's all these questions before about brain games. We've all heard about that. My mom still does Sudoku because she thinks it helps her brain, but the clinical evidence for 99.9% of those games doesn't really hold out. So brain games don't seem to do anything tangible for cognition, at least over a longer period of time. We tend to get better at the game, but it doesn't have impact in our life. This is so cool because actually you're pairing some type of brain games, kind of, but when you pair it with a physical task, we seem to have these lasting changes in brain function that go beyond the exercise themselves. So you're not just getting better at the Spark Gym, actually it goes right into your life. And so that's, maybe if you can expand upon, that's question number 2 for me is, and I love your statements, everybody with a brain, because I absolutely believe it. So executive functions, can you maybe tell the viewers what that means? And is this, is it helping a mom? Is it helping an athlete? Is it helping someone in the boardroom?
Totally. I mean, executive function, it's probably our biggest important cognitive domain, right? It's like the boss of our brain, the manager, the CEO of our brain, right? And it's located in the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brains, and it's the part of the brain that is in charge of complex decision making, strategizing every decision that we make every day in our everyday life. Some decision might be easy. Some decision might be way more complex and require more structure and thinking and so on and so forth. So we can't live without that. By performing these tasks and getting better at them, so dual tasking, you are also improving your neuroplasticity. You're improving those brain connections that mainly connect if you're doing the 2 tasks together, the cognitive and the motor. So when you do that, that brings the far transfer, right? The brain apps you mentioned may bring you neurotransfers benefits. But if you want to bring them in your everyday life, you need to act on it. You need to react. In fact, when people say to me, but if I listen to a podcast when I'm on a treadmill, is that dual tasking? Yes, you can call it because you're actively listening, but you're not reacting to the situation. And this is what's transferable into life, because you have to react. So for the busy mom that has to make lots of complex decisions while the kids are running around the house and while she's having to do the laundry or cooking or making sure they don't fall at the playground, there's a lot of motor, cognitive and reaction activities in there. So by having stronger networks and having a brain that functions better, you're able to think faster, process faster, make a decision faster, but also act on it faster. And that really goes across every person in every life situations. At work, same thing. We need to, we see information, we absorb information from a conversation, we think about it, we look at all the different complex structures around that, frameworks, and based on that, we bring everything together. But we also have to do that while we are avoiding distractions. for instance. We live in a life where there's distractions everywhere. So there's so many elements that can be trained to improve everyday quality of life. Not to talk about industries where you have to be uber focused. If you're a surgeon, maybe not pilots as much anymore. It's more automated, but you need to be able to, special forces, we all need to, at certain times, react to certain situations that may require us to make complex decisions fast.
I'll double click a word you use just because we hear it a lot in popular media, and I think 90% of the time it's used incorrectly, and it's neuroplasticity. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm a neurophysiologist by training, so I always like to talk about physiological changes, something that's actually happening in the brain from even a structural point of view. And you're absolutely right. So cognitive motor dual tasking has structural changes, right? Maybe can you highlight any of those? Like what's changing in the brain for that neuroplastic component?
Yeah, sure. Well, when we dual task, okay, also as we exercise, there's more cerebral blood to the flow, to the brain. So there's more activity going on in the brain, and you can see that from fMRI and various devices. And I've done an experiment on dual tasking and looking at brain oxygenation in the prefrontal cortex, and you can see the spike. So that happens, okay? With that, more growth hormone, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the fertilizer of the brain. So these are all things that happen, of course, also fairly quickly, but also over time. The more you train your brain doing certain things, the more those neural pathways, those strengthen and connect. So that's where you see lasting results. So it's not that you do dual tasking once and great, fantastic, now those pathways are connected. It's like muscle mass. You have to continue and you have to maintain strength training in your life. So is the same principle in a nutshell.
For muscle mass, it's a good reference too, because it's one of the few activities that they see a change in hippocampal size, right? From dual tasking.
Yes. Well, I have seen some research though on cardiovascular exercise too, I must admit.
That can increase it. So the hippocampus is the memory center of our brain. It's kind of where our senses, the majority of our senses go through, and then it's scattered through the rest of our brain, and memory comes in and out of that place. It's one of the few places, or one of the first things to go in Alzheimer's disease as well. But interesting enough, it's one of the few places in the brain where you get neurogenesis. So you can actually have new neurons being made, because generally speaking in our brain, the number of brain cells you have when you're early 20s is kind of the number you die with. So our brain can't make new cells with the exception of the hippocampus. And that's the research that I found fascinating. You're right, there's cardiovascular, there's a few of them, but especially dual tasking, it seems remarkable from the structure perspective of how it can change our brain so dramatically.
Yeah, actually, maybe I have a question for you and something for the next podcast, but I recently was doing a bit of research, of course, on dual tasking, but some of the questions that were posed were like, is there a part of the brain that is more linked to dual tasking? Like, is there a region? And I know you can't really pinpoint a certain region for certain types of activities, but typically, if you're doing a racket sport or if you're doing something where you're working that perception, of course, the back of your brain and your vision will be very much involved in your depth perception. But the question that was posed into this research paper I read was exactly that. Is there certain networks in the brain or certain parts that are more involved in dual tasking? And I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my general perspective for that is I don't think there's a certain part. I know that we don't understand the mechanisms of dual tasking yet, right? From like a neurophysiological perspective. And there's a few theories that are out there. I think the one that I prescribe to, or I think that I agree with the most, is it's more about infrastructure changes in the brain. So it actually aids in communication between areas. So rather than it being in a specific area, it's actually kind of making the highways and the information flow happen much easier between all the different parts of our brain. There's no hard evidence for it. There's ancillary evidence for a few different theories, But for me, I think that's probably what's changing is our ability to quickly integrate information from different parts of the brain. Are we nerding out?
Yeah, I'm loving it though. It's great. I feel like I'm like listening to an episode of Huberman. This is ace.
No, it's so cool. It's one of these things that we don't really know. What the effects are super clear. Like if you go to Sparks to the gym, you're going to notice the difference. It's detectable and it's lasting. But then the cool part is we don't totally understand how or why it's happening. It's a little bit like exercise. So weight training and cardiovascular training do different things to our brain, both beneficial, but the mechanism of why it's happening is not totally understood yet. So that's a really fascinating component from my side, is just the benefits are clear, but we don't quite know how.
Yeah, the brain, it's a mystery.
And there was literally another piece of research I read the other day, which I also found really, really interesting. And it was about balancing and dual tasking, because I do a lot of that with my clients at the gym. I get them to dual task, multiple object tracking in 3D, and then I get them to balance. And some of the research was actually showing that dual tasking was helping with their balance. I was, whoa, and balancing is amazing for the brain by itself. But now with the dual task component, and when I read that, and when I see them dual tasking, I actually go, is your balance better? And I thought it was, yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but.
No, we recommend dual tasking now for like longevity when we talk to clients who are looking for an aged population, because it's balance for sure, which dual tasking can help with. It's also showing improvements in gait.
Yes.
So walking. And you mentioned a benefit in the earlier in the show about spatial awareness and processing, which is a big component of dual tasking. As we get older, our ability to properly walk over obstacles declines. So tripping increases a lot as we get older. You don't quite measure how high that stair was. So cognitive helps with that as well. There's even a study out talking about dual tasking and lowering or potentially lowering the risk of Alzheimer's later in life. How does it work? We don't know, but there is all this kind of circumstantial evidence coming out. But no, absolutely in longevity with an aged population and the doctors that we work with, this is a key component, because you're hitting kind of the three things for fall prevention.
Before we kind of ask Anna some questions around how cognitive motor dual tasking can help with decision fatigue. Sean, this is only our second episode. So can you just please let our listeners and viewers know a little bit about what is decision fatigue and what is the impact of decision fatigue?
So decision fatigue is, again, one of these cool things that we don't know everything about yet in neuroscience, which seems to be the theme. But what we do know about decision fatigue, first off, is it's very different from mental fatigue. So mental fatigue is a state of feeling tired, right? When you wake up in the morning and you have that feeling you need a perk and you have a cup of coffee or an energy drink. So that's mental fatigue, feeling tired. Decision fatigue is somewhat mutually exclusive. So you can feel very tired and have decision fatigue, or be wide awake and have decision fatigue. And what we know about decision fatigue from a consequence perspective is it does really one of two things. So first is it's decision avoidance. So if you have decision fatigue, actually you may start to avoid decision makings throughout the course of your day. So think of whatever job you're in. This could be something like not sending or reading that email in your inbox. It can be kind of the concept of procrastination, so you're avoiding making that decision at all, to as serious as a soldier, freezing up in combat because they have decision fatigue and they're avoiding or cannot make decisions. The second consequence of decision fatigue is what we call default decision making, and this is a bit more sinister. This is when actually our brain decides to take the decision kind of away from our conscious control and move a lot of the processing into our unconscious side of our brain. And what your brain will do in this situation is it will rely on heuristics, or it'll pick a decision that it perceives to be the safest decision. Maybe it's one you've made before or one that you're most comfortable with. But quite often that default or safe decision isn't totally appropriate to the situation at hand. So a quick example of that, the default decision making, is a study was done with judges in the judicial system, and they showed that you're far more likely to get parole in the morning than later in the morning or even in the afternoon. Why? Because these judges had decision fatigue, and they had a default safe decision of keeping people in prison rather than releasing them back into the community. So in that situation, it kind of it altered their perspective and their viewpoints of these judges. So a long-winded answer to what decision fatigue is, but what fascinates me is it's probably one of the most important cognitive disablers of our time, and not enough people are talking about it. Because the reality is decades ago, we were probably making hundreds of decisions a day. But now the average person is making something like 35,000 decisions a day. So the number of decisions we're making is just astronomical. And our brain, I mean, simply put, wasn't designed to handle this many decisions. And decision fatigue is that consequence.
I just want to kind of help our listeners and viewers maybe kind of understand that this is something that they are very likely suffering from. You know, it's that feeling that when you get home from work and somebody asks you what you want for dinner and you just can't, like you can't answer that question. You feel, you know, you're just like, I just don't know, you know, can you just make the decision for me? You whatever, I'll have whatever, or let's just order a takeaway because it's just the easiest option. You know, it's that feeling of in the afternoon putting off a piece of work that you know needs to be done because you just can't quite face it. You know, it's a frustration. It feels like tiredness, but it's not. You just feel mentally drained. I think it's probably kind of the best way to try and describe it. And I hope and I'm sure that that's going to be how most people can relate to it and understand how it might feel for them.
Great examples of that. And the consequences of what you just said are pretty astounding, right? Because when you have decision fatigue and you avoid it, but then you're giving that decision to someone else. So I mean, something minor like picking a restaurant, but actually you're giving that decision to someone else. You're kind of giving away your fate to some degree because you're suffering from decision fatigue and you're letting someone else determine your future.
Yeah, someone once said to me, you are the sum of your decisions, but the ones that you make, but the ones that are made for you. And it was that it was like the ones that are made for you. I was like, shit, you know, like the, you know, made for you by your parents when you were a child, made for you by your teachers, your educators, made for you by your employers, made for you by your governments. Mm-hmm. Do you really want to be giving those up? You know, giving those decisions away?
Big question. Yeah. Now a question for you that I know you don't have the answer to, but I want to hear your thoughts. Because dual tasking.
Yes.
Okay. Just high level. If we look at dual tasking, what it does for our brain is it helps us do multiple things easier, right? And as you build that capacity for multitasking, you get better and better at it. And so it's easier for your brain to process, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. If a decision becomes easier for you because of dual tasking, that means the cognitive load or burden is also lower, right? So theoretically, then does that allow us to make more high quality decisions because the cost of each decision is lower? Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example of that. Habits. So we do know that if you have a habit, decision fatigue doesn't happen as quickly. So if you do a routine that you're very well established in your life and you follow through with it, you're not really making decisions because the decision's made for you because it's a habit or it's a robust schedule, right? It's an easier course of day without the load of decision making. Do you think cognitive motor dual tasking can help with decision fatigue?
Yeah, like you say, I don't have a scientific answer for it, but
even anecdotally,
instinct.
it would be great to hear because I know you work with a lot of professionals, you work with athletes. Has Michelle, as she defined decision fatigue, do you work with clients who suffer from it, and have you noticed a difference when you show them dual tasking?
I mean, I can even talk just for myself, to be honest. I mean, since I started doing cognitive motor training, dual tasking, multiple object tracking, different cognitive training combined with the physical, I mean, I've seen benefits in myself in terms of I just feel the brain connecting the dots much, maybe not quicker, but at least I want to think more strategically and more accurately. And I don't know if part of that is placebo, the idea of thinking, well, my brain is plastic, is neuroplastic, so my brain can improve and can evolve despite the fact that I'm aging. I can feel it, and I can feel as I'm evolving along my entrepreneurial and business journey, I think I'm making more and more complex decisions that 10 years ago I would have not even envisioned having to make. Am I better equipped to handle those? I want to think so, yeah. So I have seen subjectively an improvement in this, in handling complex situations. Can I pinpoint it down to that? Not 100%, of course, but I have seen changes. I've seen clients that report feeling better at work and life, saying, I feel I can focus more. I feel I can avoid distractions. I can stay more focused when I'm focusing on a complex deal or whatever they are doing. So with that in mind, with being more equipped, and I think combined with prioritizing decisions, right? Maybe some decisions are not that important for you to waste your time and energy. So maybe make them a habit so that you have more energy to focus on priorities or decisions that need to be prioritized and require more brain power. So maybe a combination of both.
I mean, decisions cost money, right? So we know there's a study out there too that in the banking industry and in loan application officers, so they're more likely to reject loans in the afternoon than in the morning. Why? Because of decision fatigue. So a bank is losing a ton of money every single day from decision fatigue. And so I know it's great to hear the subjective changes, but without saying any names too, I know some very big corporates are talking to you because this is becoming a fundamental issue in the corporate world, in the professional world. We've kind of maxed out all the things we can do for what an office looks like, what we can do for a snack bar and things like that. But this right now, decision fatigue is kind of untouched, and corporates are looking at dual tasking as one means of combating decision fatigue. Can I say that? That I didn't mention any names, right?
Yes. No, but you can't even mention names. It's
well,
out there anyway. So,
well, to give context to our viewers, that like this is, and business owners and entrepreneurs and anybody in a leadership position, is they need to understand that this is something that their employees will be suffering from. And if an individual is the sum of their decisions, so is a business. Right? It's all the decisions that your employees are making. So I think it's fascinating that the impact of this, if it's getting into the corporate world, obviously there's belief and evidence that people are looking at because they think it's going to be, making a difference to their business and it's worth an investment.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and just by improving cognition itself, you're improving your executive function by itself, which is linked to decision making. So I think so it's there.
I've got a question. So
Sure.
Previously, you've said that we have maybe got a finite number of quality good decisions a day. But if I go into Sparked in the morning and I do one of your training sessions where you might have me making thousands of micro decisions in the cognitive games, is that going to deplete all of my good decisions for the day? Even if it might be training me over time.
Wow, very interesting. Sean.
Sure, yeah.
You want to answer that? You're eager.
I would say yes. In the same way that if you go to the gym in the morning and then that afternoon you're going to go, at work you have to lift things, right? It's going to be more difficult for you to lift things if you're at the gym in the morning. Long term, though, it's going to be much easier at work if you continue to go to the gym. Right? So you can think of the Sparked and dual tasking as you're building that muscle, that capacity in your brain. And long term, it's going to be much stronger and more resilient. So short term, would there be a detriment? Probably, just like when you exercise, physically at the gym.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts?
No, I love that. And I came across another study as I was geeking out the other day, literally on that the longitudinal effects of dual tasking are much longer and better if you dual task. So it's exactly the same thing. You go to the gym, you break a muscle, exactly what you say. So yes, On the other side, again, and there's no data or not enough research on saying what's the optimal amount of dual tasking into your weekly exercise routine, which is something that maybe eventually I will look into and research myself. But this is exactly that. And also if you think about sometimes when you're tired, and then you go, oh, I'll still go for a run or I'll still exercise, and you feel energetic after.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit the same or that's what I've seen when we dual task at the gym. You may feel like your brain is exhausted and you're like, oh, not sure I want to do that. And then you play a few games and all of a sudden you're sparked, for the lack of a better term, but you are actually, I feel awake now. So somewhat is like a coffee shot, whatever happens in the brain, but you feel more energetic.
Should we do this first thing in the morning when you've got all of your good decisions ready for the day, or should we do it in the afternoon when maybe you're suffering from decision fatigue? When is the optimal time to do this?
On that as well, I don't think I have the exact correct. Sean?
No, yeah, I don't think it necessarily matters, because it's the dual tasking is that long-term sites, right? So it's not about that day. It's about making sure that, after a month of doing it, that your decisions are going to come easier for you. So your capacity for decision-making increases by theoretically making each decision kind of a little bit easier. To touch on a point that you said, though, it's interesting, because I noticed when in dual tasking, or a regular gym first, when people, they know when their muscles get sore, right? Oh, it's, I feel the pain in my muscle from that lift or whatever. What's interesting in dual tasking is I find that people can tend to get frustrated. Frustration is kind of the soreness of the brain, because when they're doing the task, they and have you noticed that? Is frustration something that you see?
Yes, and I love frustration. When I see frustration in clients when they're doing something, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what you need. Okay. That means you've got to that point where your brain is tired. We take a break after, and then I frustrate you even more.
Those are your reps.
I love it. But also what I love with that is reframing it. Because when people get frustrated, actually, first thing I would ask them, are you disengaged or are you frustrated? 99% of the time is I'm frustrated, which is good. And I go, tick, fantastic. But then what I try to do is I reframe that for them and I explain to them, because frustration when I'm training them is not really helpful. So I'll reframe it to them, and not very easy for me to handle, but I will reframe it to them so that I go, this is fantastic. It means your brain is working. And think that as a positive, because your brain connecting is good for your neuroplasticity. Let that dopamine hit comes in, and then you rip the benefits off. And then they go, okay, I'll handle that. Good. But there are certain games that have a higher cognitive load than others at the gym as well. And you can really see that when they hit that point, and they'll notice that themselves. They'll go, oh, I'm just losing attention. I'm mentally fatigued, like it's exhausting and stuff. But I push them a little bit more, and then I give them a break. I don't know what the sort of optimal level of pushing, and maybe some of the technologies and wearables that will come in the future will be able to pinpoint better at what point is optimal, or what point it becomes detrimental, perhaps. But typically for the daytime question, for when is optimal to do dual tasking, I think is very personalized. I mean, it follows our nature, what kind of person we are, and how when is our peak time and when is not, when are we more sort of focused and attentive. But the reality of it is that most often we need it more when we need the dual tasking, or the ability to stay focused when we can't stay focused. So if I'm at work at 5:00 and I still have to make decision making, maybe that's also where I should train. I don't know. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't think there's a straightforward answer. I mean, a bit to your point.
You just mentioned wearables then. Is there any way for us to track like decision fatigue or how we're feeling with wearables yet?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, because obviously devices that look into the brain, you can get in trouble for those if they're too invasive, and they're complicated and tech heavy, and people aren't going to strap into big machines. So you're kind of stuck just with neuropsychological questions. So kind of surveys about how you feel, what you think your capacity is, but. Will there be a test one day to try to measure decision fatigue? Probably. There's one in the market already called the decision fatigue scale that worked very well in the medical community, so among nurses and doctors. So people are working on it for sure.
What about like Google Glasses being able to track like how productive you are or how easily distracted you are or like, how little you might be focusing or...
That's a great question, actually. So that kind of falls into like the productivity idea, right? And what's interesting about decision fatigue is so much of the productivity software out there today is measuring is like how often you're engaged with the screen, how your mouse is moving, keystrokes, how many emails you're sending. But it's not asking the question about if those are good decisions.
Quality, right?
Quality decisions, right? And I think that's the key thing, because as a leadership of a corporation or running a hospital or whatnot, it's not about how many decisions your doctors, nurses, or employees are making. It's about the quality of each decision.
Yeah.
And so I don't think productivity software is really, whether it's in the office or wherever, I don't think it's actually tracking the right thing right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that comes back to the taking an energy drink or energy supplements, having caffeine, having coffee. That's going to improve the speed in which you can get things done. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the decisions or the quality is going to be any better.
Yeah, I mean, a great analogy is if you think of a soldier, in combat, or just a soldier with a gun. Caffeination in soldiers has been a well-researched subject, and especially the U.S. military. And we know that caffeination can help a soldier pick up a gun, aim, and shoot quickly and accurately. So that's all the things that will happen with caffeine or stimulant. But it's not about whether the soldier should pull the trigger or not. That's not affected by any type of stimulant. So yes, we can get soldiers to shoot quicker and more accurately, but we're not thinking about whether they should pull the trigger. So subjectively, I know you've noticed a lot of difference in yourself and your clients, but what's really interesting to me is that companies are starting to put money behind this. They're starting to invest in the concept of decision fatigue and cognitive motor dual tasking. So you mentioned earlier that people and societies and communities are the sum of their decisions. So is a company. So you have some exciting news, I think, because a very big corporation actually is taking a big bite into cognitive motor dual tasking with you. It's JLL. So maybe you can give us a brief intro on what's happening there in that project.
Sure. Yeah. So we've been discussing this project with JLL for close to a year now, and we're working with the work science department team at JLL, a very innovative team, I must admit, a guy called Ben Hamley, and he's just been fantastic in really embracing the concept of brain fitness, cognitive fitness, but also with exercise, really. So really, really kudos to the team, because I think they're visionaries as well in what they think the potential of this is. They know corporates have issues to tackle, and they are proactive in exploring ways of solving these problems and giving solutions to their clients. So they have a big portfolio of companies they work with, and they, as far as I know, they are always trying to find out what can we help you with, how can we solve certain issues. And of course, some of the issues that come up with are corporate well-being, team building, but also things that are more related to productivity, or which is related to decision fatigue. The more decision fatigue you have, the more productivity issue you will have. So they are very open and very innovative in the ways they look at it. So anyway, we are partners with them now, which is very, very exciting. We've essentially set up a space within their corporate office in their headquarters, and there we're running pilots programs in conjunction with the National University of Singapore, both the School of Medicine and the Business School. And we are also collaborating with a neuroscientist as well. And we are really looking at a lot of metrics. Now, the study will start in Q1 of 2025, just in a couple of months. And we are really looking at physical metrics, cognitive metrics, but also productivity and well-being at work metrics. So there's a lot of data that will be collected out of this study. It's a 2 months intervention. The participants will be training twice a week, and they will be doing the physical and cognitive classes, brain-body classes through the studio we've created, and we will measure results at the end of it. Very, very exciting. And the fact that a corporate company sees the importance of this, it's really, really fantastic.
No, it is. And I know just even just myself, once we started to talk about decision fatigue on LinkedIn and things like that, the number of corporations that reached out, because I think as soon as you define decision fatigue, they immediately recognize it in their employees, especially the high stakes decision makers who have to make decisions rapidly, commodity traders or things like that, or other folks in the finance industry. So congratulations on the partnership. It's a big one.
Thank you.
And super exciting, the study. I can't wait to see those results.
Okay, so obviously we're all here in Singapore. Sparked is here in Singapore. So if people don't have access to a state-of-the-art Sparked gym, wherever they are, how can people do cognitive motor dual tasking or training wherever they are in the world?
Great question. Mm-hmm.
Sure. There are different ways. One is totally without technology, but require a bit more determination from participants, meaning you could be doing swimming, running, walking, cycling while you're maybe doing some maths, tables and so on. I was actually doing that yesterday, swimming. I was going over 3, 6, 9. Yeah. So you could do that, but obviously that really, for most people, that would be kind of the next level. Like already going for something physical might be not the most exciting thing.
I have to say, I do that though when I'm marathon training. But more to kind of just distract me from
like
it.
A mantra?
So sometimes I count, but then sometimes I will basically do my times tables. Sometimes I'll kind of I'll pick a number and I'll do Countdown.
Yeah.
The TV show is great. I'll pick a number and I'm okay, how do I get to that number? And so I'll kind of do them in my head when I'm doing long distance, monotonous running.
You think of the most monotonous things possible.
Just to try and distract me from the pain of running long distances.
This is so boring. Let's think of something even boringer.
I'm gonna do math. But that's fascinating. That's really interesting.
Fantastic. But there's another one I do is association. So I would set up, I would choose a color, for instance, or I would say, okay, as soon as you see that color, Anna, as you're walking down the street or as you're running or doing whatever, you will associate fruits. So you have to start naming any kind of fruit.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if you see, or whatever color you see first, you will associate career, jobs. And so I work on my verbal ability, and I find that very, very difficult, by the way. But sometimes I challenge myself to that. So there are various things you can incorporate in your run.
Yeah,
I love that. I do something similar with the kids, when I'm driving. So I'll be driving the car and we'll be playing a game with the kids. And they're a bit too young for I Spy with beginning of a letter because they don't know how to spell words yet. But we'll do I Spy, the colour green. We also play a game that they love, and it's What Am I? And so I will say to them, I am big, I'm round, I change shape, I live in the sky. And then they'll have to guess, it's the moon, and they love it. And I will literally be everything from food to animals to objects. But it's really kind of gets me trying to be creative and thinking about the games that I'm playing whilst I'm driving. So it's not quite as physical, but
so exactly. So adding the extra physical component to whatever game Absolutely. So keep it fun, enjoy it, new experiences, new stimuli. Of course, if you want to invest a little bit of money, but actually you don't even have to. There are a couple of apps that will flash stimuli out on the screens, right? So very, very simple to use. The only thing is you have to pre-plan the game yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
So you'll have to kind of challenge yourself on that.
Yeah.
So there are lots of very sort of easy tools out there. Of course, reaction lights are becoming more and more popular. So, and they're not that expensive. So certain people invest in those, and they are very portable. You can play lots of fun games, even with the family. And again, you associate a different color or stimuli to a different task. Yeah. And then you respond and you play games together. So it's becoming more and more popular.
Those reaction lights, just because probably a lot of people don't know about them. Are they on your website, or can they Google reaction lights?
Yeah, so we have them on our website, and there's a lot of different brands out there, without naming any in particular, but there are lots of, they're becoming more and more popular.
Because they are at home use. You can definitely just get them and practice at home with those too. Yeah, cool.
I mean, look, some of the most common ones would be things like Blaze Pods. They're called, very accessible. You can find them on any platform. We use neural trainer lights as well. Those are very, very good. I love them because they actually flash numbers, letters, arrows. So you're responding not just to a color, but you're responding to different stimuli. So find the only arrow that is different from the others, as an example, while you are actually moving. And as simple as it seems, while you maybe are dribbling a basketball or doing a soccer drill for motor coordinations and spatial demands, it becomes pretty taxing on the brain. Like, it takes longer time for people to respond to the stimuli. So, yeah.
Okay, I know what I'm adding to my Christmas list. It's not too late. So just one quick question that's just got me thinking after that piece was, should we be getting our kids to do this? Like, Sean and I both got kids that are kind of under 5. Is this the type of thing that we should be getting them doing as well now?
I want to say yes. Reason being, one, because a lot of kids these days spend times on iPads, on devices, so they move less anyway. They are so technologically savvy that they want technology in their workouts already. And I see that with my kids themselves. I mean, they play sports. Adding a stimuli also makes you want to react more. And I can tell you, if I place some reaction lights on the floor, my son would run faster than if I tell him, hey, go and get the rugby ball over there, just because there's a stimuli he needs to respond to. So anyway, these are a kind of, but to answer your question, yes, absolutely. It will just make them quicker. It will, I think it will strengthen those connections.
And it's fun.
And it's fun, exactly. No excuse.
I'll send the kids over to the gym.
Yeah. I'll pass them to my trainer.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you're in for it now. Oh, Anna, this has been so good. I can't wait to come into the gym. I'm going to come next week and give it a go. And I'll let everybody know how we get on as well. Maybe we'll shoot some little video as well on there, just on my phone, and can show people what it's like. Add some B-roll into this podcast, into this video. Wow, Anna, such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise and your passion for cognitive motor dual tasking with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I think I speak for, well, certainly ourselves and all of our listeners. It's a fascinating subject. Again, you're one of the few people in the world who are trying to tackle this issue. It's in one of the leading researchers almost in this capacity as well, partnering with big universities. So thank you so much for the questions you answered today and helping us understand dual tasking and how it can affect our decision-making processes.
For all of our listeners, please remember that dual tasking is a game changer for anyone looking to enhance their cognitive abilities, boost their physical fitness, and achieve peak performance in all areas of their life. or your life. Be sure to check out Sparked to learn more about Anna's incredible work and explore all the resources available to help you get started on your own dual tasking journey. I'll make sure that we linked to Anna, all of her sites, and all of those amazing studies that you've mentioned. So unfortunately, you're going to have to go through this episode and try and remember where you read everything. But yeah, it would be great to kind of link to all of the sources.
So if you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to Decisions That Count and leave us a review. Also, feel free to throw some comments in or any questions that you have around cognitive motor dual tasking or decision fatigue. Treat it like a journal club as well for all you scientists out there to post some other articles that you may find interesting that relates to the subject. So until next time, keep those brains and bodies active, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.